Storytime about how my friends made everyone hate me. So a little background information, I was 15 and in 9th grade. And we're going to call my best friend Charlene. Her and I were best friends from 6th grade all the way up till freshman year. Well, when we got into high school, she caught feelings for this sophomore who we're going to call Ben. And when I say she caught feelings for this boy, she was like in love with him. Personally, I didn't like anybody. I just got out of a toxic relationship. So boys were like the last thing on my mind. Well, instead of Ben trying to pursue things with her, he would always try to flirt with me instead. And I would never go along with it because duh, girl code. Well, instead of talking to Ben about this, she would run to all of her other friends and call me a slut. For me, quote, letting him flirt with me. Like, girl, I can't control him. The most I can tell him to do is stop. Anyway, so the one day we were waiting for the bus to go home, and all of a sudden Ben comes up behind me and gives me a hug and a kiss. On the cheek, of course, but still. So I push him off of me because, ew. Well, Charlene laughs it off like everything's fine, like for part 2 about how my friends made everyone hate me. So like I said, Ben comes up behind me, give me a hug and a kiss, and I say, ew, push him off of me, and then Charlene laughs it off like everything's fine. But then the next day at school, people are telling me about how she was telling everybody that I would force him to kiss me and hang out with me. And of course everybody believed her, and no one believed me. Which I'm not gonna lie, I feel like in high school, whenever there's a rumor starting, unless you tell your side of the story first, no one's gonna believe you. Well, thankfully, he ended up explaining the whole situation to everybody. So once those rumors were laid to rest, she started new rumors that she was gonna fight me after school. And I was tired of putting up with the shit, so I ended up beating her ass, and now I'm a senior in high school. And thankfully have found amazing supportive friends. As for Charlene, I haven't heard anything about her since, and I would like to keep it that way. Because why would you let a boy get in the middle of our friendship? Storytime about my psycho boyfriend and backstabbing best friend. So a little background information, I was 17 and in 12th grade, and we're going to call my best friend Sheila. And she had just met this guy who was, quote, the love of her life on this vegan Facebook page. Well, the one day while they're on FaceTime, his best friend Brad saw what I looked like and he wanted my phone number. Fast forward, she gives it to him and I start talking and we hit it off instantly. I definitely thought that he was boyfriend material because even though we lived like 5 hours away from each other, we would Skype for like 9 hours a day, every day. Fast forward to my birthday, we make things official, and he wanted to see me for my birthday, so he decided to get a hotel room for us. So finally, him and I meet in person, and we end up doing the nasty, and it was terrible, but he was my boyfriend, so Well, after this, he ends up becoming weirdly obsessed with me. He starts saying things like the next time that he comes and sees me, we're gonna get married. After talking to Sheila about it, I decided to break things off with him, because things were moving way too fast, and it freaked me out. After I told him this, he started sobbing. He was like, I wish I would have got you pregnant so that way you couldn't leave me. And I'm in shock because, dude, it has been 3 months. You need to calm down. Like for part 2. Part 2 about my psycho ex and my backstabbing best friend. So like I said, Sheila convinced me to break up with him, and I did. Fast forward, Sheila becomes super distant with me, and she's posting stuff on her Facebook like, oh, when your new boo gives you his hoodie. And her man had broke up, so I texted her asking who it was about, because I'm her best friend, duh. Finally, a few days later, after she was done avoiding me, she decides to answer with, we need to talk. I slept with Brad, and now him and I are in love with each other. And I'm like, what the hell happened to girl code? Like, yeah, I didn't want him, but at the same time, you're a snake. Like, ew. Anyway, so then she starts saying things like he's the best boyfriend, and the reason why I'm single is because I wasn't appreciative of him. I ended up messaging her ex and telling him what happened, and to get our get back, we slept together. Fast forward, a month goes by, and then I get a text from Sheila and Brad on the same day saying that they broke up because both of them cheated on each other. And it was quite comical because Brad's like, yeah, you were the best girlfriend I ever had, and then Sheila's like, yeah, you were my best friend. I don't know why I would do that to you. I told both of them to F off, and then I told her ex what happened. So him and I laugh about it, and then 2 days later, I get a text from him saying that him and Sheila are getting married. Yeah. Storytime about how my best friend punched me in the face just to impress a group of boys. A little background information. My best friend did not have a lot of experience with boys. Once she did start talking to boys, this girl did a personality switch as soon as a boy walked into a room. She would usually just act a little bit more of like a pick-me, but never like make fun of me in front of the boys. Well, the one night we went to this party. Her and I liked the same guy, which is always a recipe for disaster. But to make sure that there were no issues, we both decided that whoever he liked would get him. Majority of the night, he ends up talking to me. And I didn't really think that there was a problem because she seemed like she was fine with it. Until a little bit later, I hear her screaming, I want to fight someone. She's like, Brad, do you know that she can't fight? He's like, oh, you can't fight? And he goes, I think you two should fight right now. So then I'm like, I'm not doing this. And she goes, no, I think Brad's right. I think we should fight. So then I'm like, okay, well, you can have fun fighting somebody else because I'm leaving. She runs outside, grabs me by my hair, and punches me in the face. and just literally actually just beats the shit out of me. I did end up pressing charges on her, but moral of the story, don't be best friends with girls who don't know how to act around men. Story time about how this guy was cheating on his girlfriend with me. So a little background information, I was 15 and in 10th grade. And the one day one of my friends, Josh, decided to expose this kid named Caden because this guy Caden posted on his Snapchat story, anybody who's 14 and younger, unadd me. I find it so weird that you little girls are swiping up on my stories calling me cute. So my best friend Josh decides to expose this man and he's like, weren't you just hanging out with a 12-year-old the other day? Make it make sense. So, I only add Caden because I was going to tell him that he's gross and disgusting for hanging out with 12-year-olds. But after he sent me a picture of his face saying hi, I immediately fell in love with this man. I know this looks bad. Trust me. I know. Anyways, when I started talking to this kid, I really thought that he was on some fuckboy type shit. He was actually super sweet and really kind. Bruh. Like, he never asked me for nudes or anything. He also told me that he was single. So him and I start flirting. And y'all, I really thought that this man was about to be my husband. Now, of course, I low-key doubted him a little bit. So I ended up taking screenshots of every one of our messages. Well, him and I had never actually met in person, but we did have plans to meet up that weekend. So a few days before him and I are supposed to meet up, all of a sudden he literally went ghost. I didn't hear from him all day. And then when I go to Snapchat him, bro has me blocked on almost everything. He had me blocked on Instagram as well, but he had 2 accounts on Instagram and he forgot to block me on the one. And Instagram really snitched on this man because when I clicked on his Instagram, it had the suggested accounts. Some girl with a profile picture of him and her popped up. And she had their date in her bio. They have been dating for a whole fucking year.
Don't be shocked. You're shocked? You're shocked?
So obviously I'm gonna tell her that her man was cheating on her, but whenever I add her on Snapchat, she immediately sends me a message that says, if this is about Caden, I don't want to hear it. So instead of talking to her about Caden, I literally just sent her all of the screenshots from these past 2 weeks that him and I have been talking. The only thing I said after that was, he's been cheating on you with me. So then she literally just responds with a video of them and she's like, okay, thank you. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I personally wouldn't stay with him, but to each their own. Anyways, so fast forward, they're still together and I'm still blocked on everything. Story time about how I got catfished by my ex-boyfriend. So a little background information, I was 16 years old and I was in 10th grade. And I have been dating this guy who we're going to call Jack since my freshman year in high school. Now the first year of our relationship was absolutely amazing, no complaints. But then fast forward, we get into 10th grade and all of a sudden he changes. Now, Jake had always been a super nice person, but for some reason this year he decided that he wanted to be extra friendly to people, mainly girls. I didn't really think anything of it at the time because he told me he wanted to change up his characteristics, whatever the fuck that means. But the one day I'm in the library and then my friend Chloe walks in and she shows me a video of him rubbing some girl's thigh. And then when I confronted him about it, he was like, babe, she was forcing me to. I promise it'll never happen again. Well, I believed him. But because of this, I started paying way more attention to his actions. I realized he started going out way more and he would always have his location off. And when I confront him about it, he absolutely flips out on me, like for part 2. Part 2 about how I got catfished by my ex-boyfriend. So like I said, after I confront him about this, he decides that he's going to flip out on me, victimize himself, of course. So him and I end up breaking up, and then 5 months later, I meet this really cute guy on Snapchat. And him and I are talking for a while, and of course I start to catch feelings. And then bam, him and I start dating. Now, I'm not even going to beat around the bush with this one. I was willing to date anybody because I was lonely. The next day, whenever I go to school, Jake keeps smiling at me and tries to talk to me, but I'm ignoring him because what the fuck? Well, over the next 2 days, my new boyfriend starts acting like a total jerk. He starts asking me for nudes 24/7. He never wanted to talk to me. Well, the one day him and I were having a really good day and I decided to send them to him. And then a week later, Jack walks up to me and shows me my pictures. And he's like, if you don't do the nasty with me, I'm posting these everywhere. Now, my parents are super strict and I didn't want them seeing it, so I did it with him. And he ended up posting them everywhere and then telling everybody that we did the nasty. Story time about how my fiance cheated on me with 10 other girls. So a little background information, I met this guy on Instagram and we're going to call him Bryce. Now, when him and I met, he was stationed in Korea and he refused to ask me to be his girlfriend until he came home. So I waited an entire year for him to ask me to be his girlfriend, which low-key should have been a red flag, but he made it seem romantic in some twisted, weird way. So fast forward, he comes home in February, and he kept to his promise. The first day that we met, he asked me to be his girlfriend. So I say yes. Fast forward, him and I start having a ton of arguments because of things that he was doing while he was in Korea. Fast forward, we're officially together for 9 months. So fast forward, of course, he gets deployed to Europe in like September of 2022. So this man decides that he's going to propose to me in July and then beg me to get married to him before he leaves. Now, I may have ignored the first red flags, but I'm not dumb. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with 10 other girls. So like I said, this man begs me to get married to him before he leaves, and thank goodness I didn't, because divorce papers would have been served the same day. So fast forward, he starts acting super weird. He's going out 24/7. He's getting drunk. He's not wearing the ring that he begged me to get him. Yes, he literally begged me for a ring so that way women would know that he had a girlfriend. Well, then of course I get a DM from a girl on Instagram asking if him and I were still together. And then after talking to her, I realized he literally made a Tinder 2 days after he got deployed. And what was his excuse? Oh, I wanted to meet friends to teach me German. And listen, I was not born last night, so I kept that conversation going because I wanted to get to the bottom of what the fuck was actually going on. And then, of course, he finally comes clean that he cheated on me with a bunch of girls. Oh, and you want to know the icing on the cake? One of them was a minor. Yup. After I leave him, he has the audacity to ask for my ring back, but I threatened to tell his story time about my toxic foster family. So, little background information. Whenever this all happened, I was 19 years old and I was already out of school. But I had been adopted by a family whenever I was 16 years old. And at this point, they had been fostering my brother for about a year. So the only things that they knew about me is whatever my brother told them. Whenever I was 17, my sister ended up passing away, and I went into a really deep depression where I would wake up and go to sleep crying for months on end. And I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty neglected. Like, my family would get $800 to $1,000 every month for me, and I never saw a dime of that money, let alone we would only go shopping probably once a year for clothes, and I never really got to go out. Well, when I went to them about being depressed, they said that if I didn't feel okay after vacation, they would get me help. Well, they lied because it got worse, and they didn't really care. Everybody was getting paid to do chores except for me, and I literally had so much more to do than everybody else in the house. And then I got a boyfriend, like for part 2. Part 2 about my toxic foster family. So like I said, everybody else in the house really had no chores to do, and they would get paid for whatever the hell they did, even if it was like pick up a dime off the floor. Meanwhile, I was like Cinderella, cleaning the whole house, not getting paid for shit, and then I get a boyfriend who was super caring and acknowledged the fact that I was super emotionally and physically beat down. And the worst part is, I just want to throw this in here, my biological brother was literally no help. When I came to him saying that I was depressed, he was like, oh, you're too sensitive. And then he would literally stalk me 24/7, always knew where I was at, always was making my life even harder than it had to be. So the one morning I got up and I just decided to leave. And then after that, for 1 year straight, I got harassed with emails. I would get tailgated on the freeway. And even though I got away from them, I'm still kind of scared that my biological brother will do something. So yeah. Story time about how I got pregnant by my boyfriend's younger brother, and he still doesn't know. So a little background information, I am 19 years old and I'm in college. So my boyfriend and I have been dating for about 2 years, and we're going to call him Josh. The 2 years that we've been dating have been super rocky because he would try to hook up with other girls. Well, no, actually he wouldn't try. He would hook up with other girls. And then, him and I would break up and then we would get back together. Just your usual toxic relationship. The main reason why I kept going back to him was because he was super popular, and this made me feel like I was never going to find anybody better than him, so on and so forth. Now, Josh's brother is 21 years old, and somehow, someway, him and I started hooking up. Right around after the time I found out that my boyfriend was cheating on me with my cousin. Yes, my cousin. I'm saying that like I'm not hooking up with his brother. Anyways. Well, one day I realized that I haven't gotten my period in 2 months, so I took a pregnancy test, and it came back positive. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I got pregnant by my boyfriend's younger brother, and he still doesn't know. So like I said, my boyfriend cheated on me with my cousin, and somehow that led to me hooking up with his younger brother. Well, fast forward, one day I realized that I haven't gotten my period in 2 months, so I took a pregnancy test and it came back positive, of course. And the first thing that I did was go to Josh's brother because him and I were hooking up way more than my boyfriend and I were within the past few months. Well, we both came to the conclusion that I should just tell my boyfriend that it's his and see what happens from there. So I told my boyfriend I'm pregnant and he was super happy, gave me this whole speech about how he's going to be a better boyfriend for me and the baby, which in simpler terms pretty much means, yay babe, I'm going to stop cheating on you since you're pregnant, but only because you're pregnant. So now my boyfriend is raising my 1-year-old daughter who he thinks is his, and I'm still hooking up with his brother. Story time about how my best friend got my house raided. So a little background information, I was 16 and in 11th grade, and we're going to call my best friend Jenna. Jenna and I have been on and off friends since elementary school. Now, the reason why we were on and off friends was because Jenna was the type of person who ended up in drama all the time. And coincidentally, anytime that I would stop being her friend, I would be in no drama. Now, there have been multiple times where I've tried to break off our friendship for good, but Jenna, of course, was the type of girl who would threaten to unalive herself whenever things didn't go her way. And I low-key have a savior complex. Also, I literally lived right across the street from her. So it was very hard to cut this friendship off. Well, anyways, fast forward, so her and I are friends, which also wasn't good because she was a very bad influence on me. For example, I didn't have a driver's license, but I had a car. So of course I would go pick her up and her and I would fuck shit up together, aka do bad things. Well, the one night I let her drive and she ended up going to my ex-boyfriend's house, like for part 2 about how my best friend got my house raided. So like I said, no license, but I had a car and I let her drive that night. And she went to my ex-boyfriend's house. Now, her and him used to be close whenever him and I were dating. And I didn't think anything of it until she called him and she kept telling him to come outside of his house so we could fight him. And I'm telling her to stop, but she just keeps laughing the whole time and she always does shit like this. And I was tired of being pulled into shit like this because then I got named the psycho stalker girl. So then I find out that after she went home that night, she texted my ex with this whole elaborate story about how I was the one who made her drive to his house and say all that shit. So fast forward, her and I got into it at school because I told a counselor that she was threatening to unalive herself because I was really worried for her. But then she starts posting stuff about my mental health on social media, saying things like, oh, she has zebra stripe arms. And I fought her after that because the only reason why I told our counselor is because I gave a shit about her mental health, like for part 3. Part 3 about how my best friend got my house raided. So like I said, she posted stuff online about my mental health and then her and I, we ended up fighting at school and her mom decided to press charges. But then I ended up showing the cops everything that she had said to me online and all the bullying that she was doing and how she would literally blackmail me into being friends with her. And this made Jenna and Jenna's mom super unhappy, so they ended up filing a false report about me to the police, saying that I have illegal stuff in my house, and I do this, and I do that, and I plan on unaliving my mom. Like, what the fuck? So in the middle of the night, my whole family and I are woken up by this loud banging on our front door. So my mom, hurry up, go open the door, and they're saying that they have a warrant, and come to find out, the only thing that they could find were a bunch of empty vapes, which my mom was not happy about. And yeah, my mom and I's relationship is super rocky sometimes, but I would never try to unalive her. Storytime about my weird cellmate. So a little background information, I was 17 years old and a junior in high school. Yes, I was 17 and I was being charged as an adult, so I was in with a bunch of women. Well, one night after dinner, my cellmates and I are watching true crime shows, because that's what you do when you're in jail, watch true crime and CSI and all that shit. Anyway, so we're watching our shows and we see a new girl come in. She's got her blanket packed and we're all being warm and welcoming, and immediately all of us could sense that something was off with this chick. Immediately, she starts going off about how she has a problem with the TV show we're watching. She did not like the fact that we were watching crime shows. She was like, oh my gosh, you guys really need to turn this off like right now. Low-key thought I was gonna see her on there or some shit. But yeah, she was just being super paranoid and we're sitting there like, girl, we have 10 channels. 7 of them are going to be true crime and 2 of them are the news. Oh, and the other channel was black and white movies and nobody wanted to watch that shit. So then I asked her if she unalived someone, like for part 2. Part 2 about my weird cellmate. So like I said, I asked her if she unalived someone before, because only somebody who unalived somebody would be triggered over us watching true crime, but she completely ignores me. So the first night, something happened with this girl. It was low-key, very, very weird. Me and my other cellmates were like, this girl's weird as hell, why is she here? And then the next day was the icing on the cake. So it was cleaning day, and we're all cleaning our stuff. And this girl just starts cleaning the weirdest things, like the inside of trash cans and shit that didn't need to be cleaned. And then it started getting creepy. Not weird, creepy. She put a paper towel over the drains because the voices were too loud. And then she would walk around the pod talking about death and carnage. And if you don't know what carnage means, it pretty much just means unaliving a lot of people. So this was super bad vibes, obviously. Now, when you're in jail, of course people are going to ask what you're doing time for. And if you don't say, you're going to come off as sketchy. So we're asking this girl, hey, what are you in for? And she would not give us a straight answer. Well, while she was at a visit, we went through her things, like for part 3. Part 3 about my weird cellmate. So like I said, we asked her what she was in for and she didn't answer, so we found that weird as heck. So then she went for a visit and we searched through her stuff and found her paperwork. We found out that she was in because she attempted to unalive her husband, in which he got a restraining order. So at this point, we're like, this is weird as hell and she needs to go. Like, she gotta go. So now the entire pod comes together and every single one of us wrote a letter pleading the staff to get this crazy you-know-what out of our pod. We all folded them up into little paper kites and we sent them to the guards. We were ringing the doorbell like crazy and we told them what happened and no questions asked, she was gone. Story time about why you just can't bring some friends around your boyfriend. So a little background information, I was 17 and a junior in high school. And I had been best friends with this one girl who we're going to call Lily for about 2 years. Now, Lily and I weren't your ordinary best friends. We were the ones that would party together, but we would never talk about anything serious. And when I mean serious things, I mean like a secret that you don't want anybody to know. Just for a little example, the one time I told her that I thought I was pregnant, and clearly she knew that I was super scared, and I told her I don't want anybody to know, please don't say anything. In about 30 minutes, I had like 20 people asking me if I was pregnant, and then somehow my parents found out. She's also the best friend that you keep away from any guy that you like. Well, I have been dating this guy who we're gonna call Jared for 6 months. And obviously, now that I have a boyfriend, I've stopped hanging out with her as much. But my whole thing is she would never give me a heads up on plans. She would literally just text me and be like, hey, we're going out tonight. And I would text her back and I would be like, sorry, I can't. I already have plans with Jared. So this made her really upset, like for part 2. Part 2 about why you just can't bring some of your friends around your boyfriend. So like I said, she was getting very upset with the fact that she would ask me to make plans last minute and I would tell her that I'm busy with my boyfriend. And this went on throughout Jared and I's whole relationship. And it wasn't like I would ignore her. I would still hang out with her. I just wouldn't go and party and stuff like that because I respected my relationship. She would also always ask me to not bring my boyfriend to these parties, and that's another reason why I wouldn't go. So the one night she's like, listen, come out with me. You can bring your boyfriend. It won't be a problem, which was a shocker. So I was a little bit skeptical, but I said, okay. So we go to this party and usually whenever I'm with Lily, I get really messed up, but I was trying to pace myself this night. And then she's like, come on, you don't mind if she gets drunk, right, Jared? Of course, him wanting me to have fun. He said no, he doesn't mind. She calls us an Uber and then she asked for my boyfriend's Snapchat just so that way she could check up on us because I was too drunk. The entire ride home, Lily is blowing up Jared's phone and we just think that she's trying to check on us. No. Instead, when we got home, he opened his phone and it was actually Lily sending him a bunch of naked pictures. Story time about how my best friend made my whole school hate me. So a little background information, I was 13 and in 8th grade, and so was my best friend who we are going to call Layla. And we met at a birthday party of a mutual friend during that summer. And all 3 of us started to hang out every day. And then when school started back up, the trio fell apart. Because our other friend Alice went to a different school, so she couldn't really hang out with us as much. When we first started school, there was this boy that I met and I really liked him and we started dating. But Layla and I had our own little friend group. There were 5 of us. Then there was this girl named Ivy. She had 4 people in her group, and our friend groups did not like each other at all. There was maybe one person from both groups that hung out with the other group, but that was it. And the only reason why none of us were friends was because the main girls, like the leaders of the group, used to be best friends. But then Ivy went behind Layla's back and started talking to this boy that Layla liked, and that's literally why they're not friends anymore. Well, all of us in the friend group were friends, but I was Layla's best friend. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my best friend made my whole school hate me. So like I said, we were all friends in the group, but I was Layla's best friend. So her and I would pretty much boss everybody else around. One day Layla tells one of our friends, Nova, to go and listen to what Ivy and her friends were talking about during lunch. Because Nova had friends who sat at the same lunch tables as them. Well, I guess Ivy was talking about how she was going to try to talk to every guy that Layla talked to just to make her mad. And that started a whole war. Layla and I have a sleepover that same night and she's like, we should make an Instagram account and expose her. Now, Ivy was notorious for sending out explicit pictures to guys. Like, even if she didn't know them, she loved the attention from guys. So Layla told me that we were going to make a fake Snapchat account and try to get her to send pictures. I'm not going to lie, it was kind of sad. She literally sent them within 5 minutes of Layla texting her pretending to be some guy. After that, we both made Instagram accounts that were named Exposing Ivy or something along those lines. And we made 2 accounts just so that way, if one got taken down, hopefully the other one would stay up. We posted the pictures on there and a lot of people saw them, like for part 3.